Hello everyone, welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Chris Pajak, that man is Josh Williams, and we are here to talk about Arne Slot's first game in charge in a pre-season friendly against Betis and the tactical tweaks that Slot made in those games from what we've seen in previous years. Josh, I'm sure you stayed up late to watch the game. Was it Saturday night?
Saturday morning.
Saturday morning?
Yeah. But I am a late man anyway. I
got the agenda at 12:30 last night. I was reading Ian Graham's book when the agenda popped through, to be honest with you. But anyway.
I'm a night owl, so it wasn't too bad for me.
Did you enjoy it? Did you stay awake for the entire game?
I did watch the entire game, but around the 65th minute.
The subs?
I kind of tuned out. It was like a kids' game in the park. But interesting, no, I mean, well, when I say interesting, it was nice to actually see football. Yeah. I think it's been a while. Nice to actually talk about match footage and the next year without it being complete guesswork. So, yeah, it was all right.
I mean, I was so looking forward to seeing what Slot was going to come up with, and I think there's a few things that we're going to touch on today which are really pertinent, really interesting. But then I will have to caveat it all, and I think you'd say the same, is there are a lot of red herrings in pre-season games as well. It's sort of little ideas that you think maybe, that's it, we can take that forwards, that's what he'll do. So in terms of like, I'm reticent to use the word formation with Arne Slot now after what happened in the press conference, but like, we're going to play with a striker.
Yeah.
So we can pretty much ignore that side of things, but the defensive shape and the build-up phase is probably where we can focus on. And about 30 seconds in, Kevin Kelleher stopped on the ball. Liverpool just dropped in to a build-up formation, and they did that every time until maybe 5 minutes before the end of the half when one ball went long or something like that, and then Jaros played a long ball when he came on. But generally speaking, I think defensively and through the build-up phase, we probably saw what we're going to see.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I think that was the big thing everyone picked up on, really. It didn't take much. It took, as you say, about 30 seconds. Queeve gets the ball, puts his studs on it, and we know how much Slot's been talking about patience and things like that during pre-season. And the shape that we adopted was a proper build-up shape that it feels like we just didn't see it under Klopp. It feels like Klopp was much more of like a off-the-cuff, on-the-fly type fella, and we also just used that one-off ball over the top in the direction of the forwards, bypassed the midfield completely under Klopp. That's going to be very different now, and Conor Bradley recently got asked what's the difference tactically under this new man, and he said probably a lot more structure in the build-up phase. So it was really interesting to see. Some of it I think we can take and look at and think this is going to stay in place. Some of it probably less so.
Yeah, that's absolutely. So let's talk about it then. Obviously, Kevin Kelleher picks the ball up in this sort of area here, and what was it you were seeing first and foremost?
So it was very much a 4-2 build shape. So you kind of had elements of that going on.
I'd say even more.
These were very wide. These were very wide.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like that. Split the pitch in half almost. And you had the back four were responsible for building the game alongside two midfielders. Mm-hmm. So you've got your four, you've got your two. This, in a nutshell, basically, is why lots of people thought that Slot uses 4-2-3-1, because this is what he did at Feyenoord. So naturally, you look at that and see, right, a midfield two, but one of these fellas up here, don't forget, is Szoboszlai. So technically, at times, it is still a midfield three, I suppose, depending on, when you get to a certain level of the pitch. But when you're building the game, it was a kind of double pivot vibes, a little bit staggered, like that maybe, and you'd rotate and stuff like that, with Szoboszlai moving a lot higher. And it was very 5-yard passes, wall passes, where like the ball comes into this man, and with his first touch, he lays it off here. Very De Zerbi, I felt.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think I can see that. And for me, I think it was really interesting that it was Endo and Curtis Jonesy, and I don't think the profile of either players particularly suited it in that one-off game. I thought because of the way the Betis sort of pressed, they were able to get a man up here and a man up here, and obviously I think it was very difficult for the midfielders, wasn't it? It wasn't until Trey and Yoni came on that we actually started seeing passes from here further forwards into the sort of advanced midfielders. Now, obviously there's a box midfield there of sorts. Sometimes they were a little bit more narrow, quite often they were quite wide. The width is being supplied, I think, by the wingers rather than the fullbacks, which would have happened under Jurgen Klopp a few years ago. So I really like the structure of the build-up play. But again, I'm looking at this part of the field here, because I'm thinking this is what's going to happen. I'm a little unsure what's going to happen up here still. Yeah. Because of the fact that we did play without a centre forward, but it was interesting.
I think structurally we could potentially, when we're building the game at least, we could still look like that. Where
would you want
maybe slightly different?
Would you want a Nunes dropping in here and trying to turn on it, or is it suited to a Gakpo? That's the.
I was just thinking that, yeah. Maybe with Nunes you do a little bit of that, and maybe something like that potentially, where it's a bit, again, kind of staggered a little bit. You obviously want to benefit your players, but I think certainly this is potentially likely to stay, just because it was present a final of that season. Even though we used 4-3-3, when you're building the game, you're doing that. Have we got a counter for a ball, just so that we can kind of visualise this?
I did have. Whether it's still in here. Oh, it's over there, Aaron. Would you mind passing us it, mate?
But yeah, the kind of the Zerbi vibe, what I was on about with that, it was just very, as I said, wall passes is probably the technical term for it, where the ball's with Kwanzaa and he fires it into Endo, and Endo's first touch goes to Jones. Jones can then maybe carry it towards this kind of area of the pitch, and then you're away then, hopefully. But quite a few moments, the ball would come into Endo, he'd try and do that, and it would get nicked off him, basically, or he'd a heavy first touch or something like that. And this kind of thing does usually take some time to get used to, and you have teething problems, and initially it is very annoying, because you're thinking to yourself, hit it long.
You can't help it, can you?
No, it's
you're under pressure, get rid type of thing.
Yeah, get rid, yeah. But Liverpool are definitely going to be, inviting pressure, baiting the press, enticing the opposition to come towards them. And then once doing that, Liverpool will eventually reach a point whereby they can escape the pressure. And then
it becomes second nature to them, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then you start to feed these lads who are kind of... I think these players as well will always stay high and wide. I think that's where you're getting your width from, initially at least, when it comes to the build-up phase. Slightly different when we get towards the final third, the fullbacks in particular. I wrote a piece on earlier in the week. Lots of underlaps and overlaps. And again, if you're going to dominate the ball, specifically here, how do you create space in the final third? Guardiola is very... It's like, them channel runs where De Bruyne runs beyond, and sometimes Walker overlaps and stuff like that. So Liverpool will be doing bits of that. But I think specifically building from the back, 5-yard passes, lots of patience. It felt really new, didn't it?
It didn't feel very Liverpool. I tell you what, I don't know whether you've considered this, and I hadn't considered it at all until we were doing the podcast on Monday with Steve Plunkett. And I never looked at it through this lens, but this and the slow build up, the way we invited Kelleher to stay on the ball while everybody got into their build up positions might just solve another massive problem that Liverpool has had, and that is being counter-attacked on. Yeah. Because all of a sudden we've got bodies, if we do lose the ball in these areas, whereby we can defend. And during the game, I was so concentrated on the build-up side of things, I actually forgot about one of the problems that Arne Slot's got to fix. And that is, how do you stop, conceding on transitions? And this may just help us with that as well.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, if you're going to be more patient on the ball especially, you've got the ball in for longer periods. So when you lose it, you've got more energy to just go and get it, as opposed to last season before, where it's just like that, the ball was like that all day. Jones mentioned it recently, end to end, too direct, he called it. So if that's the case, players like, for example, McAllister, you know, he goes pink, mate. You know, he's absolutely shattered. This is definitely more of a McAllister game that we're playing now. I think, again, you know, De Zerbi, McAllister was great under De Zerbi. I think he's going to be a natural with it. But in the Betis game, you're right, I think Slot after the game said we only conceded, I think, one big chance. And a lot of that, even beyond this, is just getting to the final third, playing with the ball, playing with the opposition. And if you lose the ball, everyone can go, regain it, and you start the next attack. But it is definitely going to be different. Very similar with the ball. Sorry, without the ball. But with possession is going to be the main change in the Slot. I think that's guaranteed.
Yeah, I thought obviously we should touch on what happened during the game, although I think we've already said we're not sure exactly what's going to happen moving forwards. You'd need a magic wand to work that one out at the moment, but I did find it really suitable to Dom Szoboszlai's game.
Yeah.
Obviously he gets the goal, which is brilliant, but those runs in behind and the fact that he was leading the press and he's got that energy to sort of lead the press was really encouraging that this might suit his game as well.
Well, this is what I think is interesting from a transfer perspective on the back of the game. Watching it, I felt kind of clearer in my head as to what we maybe need going forward. Because I think it looks like he's always going to have three midfielders on the pitch, right? Some people will interpret it at the midfield three, some people will be saying a 2 and a 1, whatever. Slot's adamant it's midfield three, as we know. But
it's too nice one.
But regardless though, it looks like 2 are going to be in the build-up phase.
Yeah.
And 1 is going to be edging towards the final third, finishing the move like Szoboszlai did. I think Szoboszlai is really suited to that. I think Elliott is really suited to that. Jones, I think, is part of this.
Yeah.
McAllister, for me, part of this. Basetic, part of this. Morton, part of this. Gravenberg is an interesting one because I think I can realistically see him in either. I'd like to see what he feels more comfortable in.
I've never thought about Gravenberg being that player before until I saw Trey and Yoni come on.
Yeah.
And I think there were real similarities between their game and the way that he played it and the way that he advanced the ball and played those progressive passes. And I looked at it and thought, actually, I can see Gravenberg there.
Yeah. Well, one thing with Gravenberg, the way in which he receives the ball, it is nice, isn't it? Like, you can tell he's got that technical side to him. You need that if you're playing like this. Endo doesn't really have it. Endo did all right last season because Klopp, historically, has always just bypassed the middle of the park. He's always done it, even with technical midfielders last season. We did a bit more midfield stuff, but with Klopp, it's always been like Van Dijk on the ball, bang. You know, Konate's on the ball, bang. Trent, bang. Over the top all the time, so the midfield doesn't have to do so much of that. In this new regime, it's looking like it's going to be a bit more possession heavy in the middle of the park, so you need technicians in there. Gravenberg looks like he could do either, but I think if you're making signings, transfer perspective, you're thinking of, if you think of a midfielder, any midfielder that you potentially link with, you maybe need to start thinking, right, is he one of them or is he one of them? I'm trying to think of him. Name a midfielder now that we've been linked with.
A midfielder. Okay, I mean, obviously there was Ugarte, wasn't there? But you don't mean that type of a player.
Well, Ugarte's there.
Yeah,
that's an example. I'm trying to think of some other ones that got completely gone up to my head. Olmo. Ederson there. Olmo there. See what I mean? So you've got kind of, we've said it quite a few times on a number of shows, but you've got kind of two teams.
Yeah.
In a way, the players who are ahead of the ball and the players who are behind it. Now, Szoboszlai will you know, drop deeper at times and help out and stuff like that, and Liverpool won't play like that every week. I think Slot specifically said, like, sometimes we'll build with 3, sometimes Kelleher, you know, will join in and things like that, and maybe one of the fullbacks will go or whatever. So there's different ways of doing it. But yeah, I think coming out of it, I picked up on, like, you know, if you're going to be signing this 6 everyone wants, I think the need now for a true destroyer, if you want to call him that. It's, yeah, I think now there's definitely a lot more of a need for this fella, whoever it is, to be really progressive and composed, cool, able to receive the ball under pressure. Thiago, you know, that kind
I
of vibe.
said exactly that when I was watching the game with Jay. I was like, Thiago will fit this perfect.
Yeah, he would have been brilliant.
Because of the way that he turns on the ball and goes forward and stuff. And it's very much now not a Paulinho.
Yeah, I agree.
Number 6, is it? It's got to be a ball player. McAllister fits into that. And I do think as well, if we think about Alexi McAllister, then he can become a 5th at times as well. And sort of be the key master, or you know, the guy who's maybe looking to unlock it and stuff like that when we do get more bodies forwards. And then we talk about the fullbacks getting forwards, the overlaps, the underlaps, all that type of stuff. It's really exciting in that sort of area for me. But one thing I do want to touch on as well then is it was very much a 4-4-2, wasn't it, in defence?
Yeah.
And it was very much Salah, and it was very much Carvalho over there. And I thought that was really interesting because that is something that we got right from earlier on in the pre-season or the post-season or whatever it was, about these wingers doing that. I was happy to see it, but I just wonder how effectual Salah is going to be at doing that.
I was happy to see it mainly because I think it pretty much puts an end to Salah, to the talk of Salah playing in the middle, because we literally had no strikers at all, no forwards, and he still didn't play there. So that tells me Slot views Salah as a wide player. I can understand why he does. It will be interesting though if he gets to a point after a couple of games or whatever where he realises a little bit Salah's not as much of a dribbler as I thought, and maybe he's just very where he finishes the move for you. Slot's, I mean, we'll get it's guesswork, but Slot looks so far like he's going to use Salah as the, you know, we create a bit of width with Salah, and we create a 1v1 where the ball comes out to him, and he uses them 1v1s and dribbles past his man, and maybe gets to here, plays it back to Nunes or whatever, and Nunes taps it in or something. I've always had just a slight question mark as to whether Salah is that, especially now. You know, he's older now, obviously, and he's less quick and all that. So that is one to watch. I think I'm generally all right with it for now, but it will be interesting to see if
there's other ways he can skin the cat as well, though, isn't there? Because, you know, right now it might be that there, but as you say, you know, I think back to the Barcelona sides with Lionel Messi in and PSG and all that type of stuff. There is a point where the manager goes, well, that's just someone doing that. So in this scenario, it could have just been quite an easy switch. Instead of Salah dropping back, it could have been Harvey Elliott that drops back, or Dom Szoboszlai if he's playing over there or something like that. It's quite easy, but it is interesting to see that in its purest form, the winger's job is to track back. Yeah.
And I think one other thing as well, obviously we're getting ahead of ourselves with all this tactic stuff and that, because it's been literally 60 minutes of action. But I actually think the 4-4-2 defensively could remain. City defending a 4-4-2 fairly often. Arsenal do it. I think Feyenoord did it at times. So seeing that against the ball, when maybe we're not so eager to press, I think we could keep seeing that.
Yeah.
But I think the whole double false 9 vibe that everyone was going on about, we're not going to see that.
No, I think that's the one thing that we can sort of put to bed, I think, early doors and stuff like that. So that's quite interesting and stuff. I mean, in terms of some of the players and the players' roles, then you sort of hinted at it between Bradley and Kostas Tsimikas. I thought Bradley was probably one of the standout players while he was on the field. Did you like what you saw from the fullbacks, and what do you think about Trent when you see that?
Yeah, well, I wrote a piece on the fullbacks because I was specifically focused on them to see what they were doing. Because Liverpool have had a bit of a width problem for a while, we know that. So I was kind of curious, like, how is he going to use this? How is he going to play with this? Because he has used inverted fullbacks at Feyenoord and things. What I picked up on was, if you were kind of in this situation here where Salah picks the ball out wide, I'm kind of assuming we're playing with a 10 there, but let's just put them all, level or whatever. So Salah picks up the ball here, and you're pretty much facing like a defensive block because you've got more of the ball than ever before. What I picked up on was Bradley would mostly underlap, but he would overlap as well. But if he underlapped, Salah would give him the ball, he'd get to here, cut back, goal, ideally.
Dead easy.
Yeah, dead easy, yeah. But whenever he overlapped or underlapped, I got a vibe that Tsimikas would kind of do that.
Yeah.
And tuck in a little bit as an inverted fullback if you want positionally. But on the opposite side, if the same thing happened, let's say Tsimikas goes, hopefully he stays on the pitch, Bradley would do it. You know, so at all times on the side of the ball, on the side of the pitch where the ball is, you'd get an element of width and an element of like wide threat, but you'd also get your safety net. Liverpool last season, and it might have been because Trent got injured, and it might have just been because Joe Gomez played a bit too much, but I felt we always had one sitter who was a designated fella, like, you don't move, and the other guy was the roamer, you know. But that, I think we come unstuck in the end because of that, because we didn't have enough variety up top, we didn't have enough width, nobody overlapping really, and it caused problems. So if this season Slot is going to be like, right, any fullback who goes, the other one covers, and then vice versa when the other one goes, it will give us the same degree of threat on both sides. It'll give us width at times, but it'll also protect us against the counters that you mentioned earlier. So again, I could be getting ahead of myself, but I picked up on it quite quickly, and I did a piece on it and used clips to back up what I was seeing. So, but that's something that I'm interested in keeping my eye on, because I think our use of fullbacks over the past couple of seasons has been a bit mad on it. Yeah,
I think you're right. And just to sort of quiz you a little bit further then, Josh, obviously Alexander-Arnold comes in for Conor Bradley in this, probably more than anything else. And if he does he play it the same way that we saw Bradley play it? And if Bradley played it the right way, because there's also an element of that at times during pre-season games.
No, I think Bradley was brilliant. I think Bradley was actually so good that he could give Slot a bit of a problem there. I think Bradley, if the underlapping and overlapping is really, really valued actually by Slot, I think Bradley's better at that than Trent is. I think Trent, sometimes I get the vibe with Trent, he doesn't want to do much run and he wants to just dictate here. But the ball was here at one point, I used this clip in my Substack, and Bradley really just goes and runs all that. Sometimes you do that and you don't even get the ball. And I get the vibe sometimes that Trent can't really be bothered doing that. Tsimikas, I get that a little bit with. I think Tsimikas is kind of at a point where he just doesn't seem very hungry.
You know Robbo's doing it.
Yeah, you know Robbo's doing it. Yeah. You know Owen Beck's doing it.
Yeah.
Owen Beck's doing it, but Tsimikas looks a bit, I don't want to say lazy, just a bit like, oh, do I have to? That kind of vibe. But with Trent, specifically because of the midfielders and the way the midfielders were, with them kind of like, you know, wall passes like that with your first touch and stuff, and receiving the ball with pressure behind you and that. I don't know if Trent is that. You know, we've seen him come unstuck a little bit with England doing all that. So I think Trent could just be a right back under Slot. I don't know if the midfield is suited to him.
No, I take your point. I think he's a right back. For all the reasons that you just said, except I do think probably where I differ is I do think he'll do that.
The overlapping?
I think he'll do the overlapping and the underlapping, because I think it plays into his ego of the fucking assist machine again. Do you know? And I think he's been taken away from that.
Yeah.
And he's not getting those plaudits anymore. And how do you get those plaudits? How do you get everyone talking about how good Trent Alexander-Arnold is again? Well, you get buy-in from getting goals and getting assists and getting into the penalty area and having every club in the bag and using every club in the bag. So I think he'll enjoy that role, and I think he'll probably enjoy the fact that the rest of the system should be able and allow him to go forwards without getting rinsed himself going back. And I think maybe where that laziness has come from, in inverted commas, is that he's so focused on being caught out of position and the media and everything else that it's actually almost scared him to get forwards.
Yeah.
And I think with a safety net, I think we'll see the best of Trent Alexander-Arnold again.
Yeah, well, I think one of the reasons I view him as a fullback now is because he's going to be allowed to take part in the build-up, which is where we're going to need him. But he's going to be taking part in it where he will have space facing towards kind of like the front of the pitch, if you know what I mean, facing towards these fellas, where if he's receiving the ball here,
no chance.
It's more half-turn stuff or back-to-goal stuff with pressure coming from behind, and it's a lot easier to get robbed in these areas. You need to be really spatially aware, and I think I see more McAllister, Jones, you know, Rodri, that kind of vibe in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Tempo players, you know, metronomes, those types of players. But what you'll see, I think, from him is, and what we saw from both Salah and from Carvalho in that first half, is they were on their bike often. And it might have been because of Betis' high line, but Trent Alexander-Arnold might have a little field day with both of them making runs in behind from right back. And exactly what you're saying, much easier to do from outside the congested middle of the park, much harder to do from in there.
Yeah. So he's getting the ability to contribute to build-up, and he's progressing the ball and all that, which we know he's really, really good at. And then when we get to the final third and we're penning teams in, he's doing the overlaps and getting to the point where you can do assists, like you've just said. So in terms of using Trent to the best of his abilities, you are getting that. What I'm slightly worried about, and I think Slot will know this, I just don't want the signature switcher play to be lost. I don't want anyone to say you can't do that. You know, obviously I want a bit more patience with the game and all that, a bit more control. But you do want to let Trent be Trent at the end of the day, and that's arguably his best move, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a conversation with Ian Graham, Liverpool's former director of research, this morning. The video will be out at the weekend. 45 minutes. It'll be out on YouTube. It was incredible, right? And we were talking about Will Spearman's pitch control model, and we were talking about Ian Graham's possession value model. And I just had this theory and thought, fuck, I'm going to ask him. Fuck it, why not? Like, and I asked him specifically about Trent Alexander-Arnold in this position here, right? And I spoke to him, obviously, if you've ever tried to read Will Spearman's paper on pitch control that he wrote well before Liverpool, I couldn't understand the fucking being of it, to be honest with you. I couldn't tell you if I enjoyed it or not. It was far too fucking over my head. Isn't it? Oh, mate.
Hieroglyphics.
Mate, honestly, it was like 45 pages long, and it may as well have been written in a foreign language because I couldn't digest it. But one thing I understand the concept of pitch control, and what I sort of said to him is you're in the right back position. I can't remember exactly how I said this, but essentially the difference maker in terms of expected threat, which is what people call it nowadays for what they're talking about. You know, being able to get the ball into a position where you control and the opposition doesn't control. Trent Alexander-Arnold from there is the difference maker, and he was smiling as I was saying it, because he was saying our models genuinely say Trent can't make those passes, and every time Trent made those passes, and they'd go, fuck, the models basically would be going, how's he done that? Yeah. So he is the difference maker, and that's where he did it from. So if we're continuing to do that, and we know Will Spearman is now in charge of that department, there's got to be some kind of a conversation around it. And you really, like, it's going to come out at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. It's a really, really fascinating interview and stuff. So yeah, we'll get that out for you and you'll be able to see it. But yeah, I think Trent doing what you've just said there is part of the game plan.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff, to be fair. But he's the kind of player who can hurt you from anywhere. And looking at the way Liverpool played against Betis, it was very structured, wasn't it? It was 5-yard passes, moving up the pitch gradually. That's fine. I've got no issues with that. I just know Trent is a bit of a unicorn in the sense that he can just get you here like that. You've got to let him do that at times, you know what I mean? So, such an interesting player though. Honestly, I always talk about him. Yeah. I always write about him. He's just he's a one-off.
Yeah, he is. And again, these players as well, they're all within his target range. Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about Trent. And Conor Bradley's a fantastic player and a fantastic prospect, and I'm sure he'll be brilliant for us. But right now, he's second fiddle for me for what Trent can do. But I think you're right. He'll give Arne Slot maybe a couple of sleepless nights and stuff like that. One player we've not spoken about, and I think he changed how Liverpool built up to show us what we're trying to do, is Traoré Noni.
Yeah, unbelievable. I think he turned 17 exactly a month ago today. I think it was. So he's
17 in 1 month.
Yeah, he's definitely a kid, mate. It's unbelievable, to be fair. And he looks like one too, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He makes me look old, which is saying something. Baby face. But
so humble, isn't it?
I'm just used to getting ID'd, mate, for paracetamol and that.
Really?
So, well, not so bad with that. We've done this on the show before.
Have we? Yeah.
We talked about.
Have you not started going to them? Only you can't do it on the self-serve machines. Because it looks like you're trying to get through the self-serve machines then, doesn't it? And then come over.
Yeah. It is a nightmare, but I'm sure he suffers from the same problems.
Well, he should do. He's not allowed to buy them, I don't think.
Very true, yeah. He's been allowed to buy paracetamol for a year.
Oh, has he?
How mad is that?
And a month.
Yeah, and a month, yeah. How mad is that, lad? It's just insane, isn't it?
Insane.
But, yeah, I think for the first...
That's how young he is.
Yeah, it's crazy. He was born just after Liverpool lost the Champions League final to AC Milan. Yeah. So, I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. That's crazy.
I was 25, I think, when he was born.
I don't even know how old I was, to be honest, but I think early in that game, we were doing the possession stuff, we were doing the patience stuff, but I felt there was a few moments where specifically Jones, well, Endo as well, they were on the ball and they just kind of got out, but you could tell they were thinking, no, possession, patience, and they just started it again, and I felt, no, you could have moved it there, you could have accelerated it there. When the only came on, we got that part. We got the actual substance behind the style, where he's on the ball, and you'll get out of the pressure, and rather than turning back into it and making the wrong move, he'd face up, see the tiniest of gaps, and just punch the ball right through it. And he didn't hesitate at all in them situations, just dead easy, doing it blind. And I said on my podcast during the week, he's like, I think if he came on and he was a silhouette, I do this analogy all the time, but if he was a silhouette and you had to guess who that was, I think that we'd have said Thiago. Obviously he doesn't play for the club anymore, but it was that kind of performance, wasn't it, where he came on and every opportunity to play forward at a good pace into the player's feet with the ball on the ground, he just did it on repeat.
Yeah, he was phenomenal, to be honest with you. And Dan's been waxing lyrical about Trey in the office for months. I'm sure he did last week with you.
Yeah, he did.
He like when we were at the AXA a few months ago, like Virgil van Dijk walked past, but like it was like the Jaden Dans and the Trey and Yannis. When they walked past, Dan was like that, like, you know what I mean? He's got a real, excuse my language, hard on for Trey and Yanni in a footballing sense only.
You're gonna have to let it out loud.
Yeah, so he loves him as a player, and I think now I've for the first time understood exactly why he loves him as a player.
Yeah, he is a top player, and I think one thing I was surprised about was I thought he was kind of more of a forwardy, dribbly carrier kind of player, but he comes on and pretty much plays as part of a double pivot, and is progressing the ball with passes and kind of dictating the tempo in certain moments. I thought he was a lot more, not necessarily as direct as a Doak, but I thought he was not far off that type. But he didn't show himself to be that at all. He showed himself to be a lot more of a just ball playing centre mid who dictates the game for you.
Okay, I suppose the final thing that we've got to do is we've got to predict what is going to happen with the forward players, Josh.
Well, I think Nunes is definitely going to play, and I think when we're building the game, I actually think it might look like that,
Do you think Nunes could go out there and, for example, Diaz could end up in this situation?
Yeah, that's possible. That's definitely possible. But when you're building the game, you are just... It's not your kind of end formation, if you get what I mean. It's not the shape that you see on the TV or anything like that.
Of course.
You just got players doing what... So I think if this was Ipswich,
yeah,
you're going Alisson, Trent,
Ibra, maybe Okonza.
Yeah, I'm actually interested to see Kanate and see how he copes with this sort of thing. But yeah, let's go Kanate for now. Van Dijk, Robertson, Jones or McAllister.
Mm-hmm.
Jones or McAllister. I think they're having them two. Szoboszlai here, Salah. I reckon Sot might like Gakpo, but Gakpo or Diaz there.
I think that role particularly suited to either of them. The way with the width as well.
That could be Nunes. In the build-up phase, that could be Nunes. And then here you get Gakpo, potentially. But you definitely want Nunes kind of like on the last line, like absolutely stretching the pitch and that. And
the problem with that is when you're defending,
Yeah, but ideally you wouldn't lose the ball as quickly as that, and, you know. But I think with possession, when you get to the final third,
Those
you want Nunes here.
Yeah.
Not even running in here, just standing there, and you know, a bit of width and all that stuff. But it's going to be interesting.
It's fascinating. I've got a feeling that what we're going to see is probably going to be a little bit more like that.
The staggered thing, yeah.
The staggered sort of, not quite so obviously a double pivot, more a layered midfield three, and then I think you get the option with those ladder passes to sort of boom.
Yeah, like a ladder, yeah. And if you look at that now, the way we've currently got it set up, that's triangles everywhere.
Yeah,
literally triangles everywhere. You know. So I think that's kind of what we're aiming for, but I can't stress enough in the meantime, before we get good at this, it's going to be a bit painful, and we're going to be annoyed, and it might happen against Arsenal and Man United in the next 2 games. But you do get to a point where teams will look at us at the minute and think, press them because you'll get rewards, and they're right. But you will get to a point where you get so good at it that teams stop bothering to press you in your own defensive third.
Like it's on you, that, innit? It's on you.
Like City.
Yeah, absolutely.
City don't get pressed anymore to Ederson because they just cut you open.
Yeah. Okay.
So no, everyone's scared.
That's it. We've had a member chat from Echam Ulsan. Thank you very much. He says, which formation is your favourite? Quite broad, I know. You got a favourite formation?
I think probably just 4-3-3. To be honest, I think our original 4-3-3 I did love, specifically in attack, like. And I think defensively, I think 4-4-2 is just a boss defensive formation, you know. Like if you've got everyone just, it's just really difficult to kind of like penetrate really. The reason all the top sides are doing it.
Yeah.
Like that's just a really good defensive formation. Do you know what I mean? You got every base kind of covered. You know, distances are good and things like that, difficult to break into. So if you can kind of create a situation where you're defending in a 4-4-2, but attacking in a bit more of a 4-3-3, which is literally fine all last season, I think.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah. What about you?
4-3-3, the original 4-3-3 in the Jurgen Klopp is by far and away my favourite formation because it's the best side that I've ever watched consistently over a period of time.
Yeah.
Defensively, I like 4-4-2. It's absolutely fine. If we're playing one at the back, I particularly used to love it when Joe Matip got brought on and thrown in the middle of a 5-man defence.
4-3-3 is also good defensively. I just feel like you're maybe a bit more reliant on your eights to be absolute workhorses, which Henderson was and Wijnaldum was. You know, they were both invincible, really, weren't they? But if you've got normal eights,
yeah, a little bit
maybe maybe help them out a bit more. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. We've decoded Slot's formation for you. Thank you very much, Josh, as always. Check out his Substack, Distance Covered. Follow him on Twitter, Distance Covered. And if you want, follow me on Twitter as well, at Mr. Bloodred. In fact, it's X nowadays. Because it's always going to be Twitter, isn't it?
Always.
Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Ta-ra.